Welcome.
Okay. Okay, I have 10 o'clock. Amanda, can you watch people coming in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, if you guys want to go ahead and get this started. Good morning. Welcome to our second Recovery Town Hall. I'm your host, J.R. Weaver, along with my co-host, Jay Fincher and Amanda Mass Darnell. I'd like to thank all of you for showing up today, and a special big thanks to Senator McLeod for joining us today to talk about recovery. A few quick notes. If you'd like to ask the senator a question, please raise your hand. I'm trying to admit people in as I'm going. Please raise your hand and we will call on you as soon as we can. Senator, do you have any opening remarks before we kick this off?
Nothing other than I'm excited to be with all of you this morning, and thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to a robust conversation.
Awesome. Okay, I'd like to get us started with a few thoughts about the state of recovery in our state. We are in the middle of an epidemic, and we need to learn to work together if we're going to find our way out of this. I do know that getting leadership with the local RCOs and people in recovery together, talking and sharing thoughts and ideals is a great place to start. If I may ask one quick request. Quick request. Anybody that's in active recovery, please raise your hand. I just want to show of hands. Okay, and congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
A few thoughts off the top of my head that may help get the ball rolling. I mean, I'm all about, early education in the middle schools, the high schools, making Narcan available in the schools, in the businesses, positive media campaigns to help break the stigma. I mean, these are all great places, great topics to start the conversation. I mean, in South Carolina alone, it's estimated that there are between 200 and 300,000 people in active recovery. Nationwide, it's estimated to be about 23 million people. I mean, we are a sleeping giant in that area, and the problem is we don't have a voice, which is kind of crazy, according with our numbers. And nationwide, in the prisons, 45% of the prisoners are in there for drug charges. I mean, that's more than double of the next charge, which I think was weapons charges. It was during the late 80s, 90s that there was a policy shift with leadership that kind of put us into what's happening today, in my opinion. We went from the mindset of trying to treat people, trying to help people, to trying to just throwing them in jail, trying to incarcerate them, trying to scare them straight, which, I understand their thinking. Their thinking was, negative experience may help one or two people in this, but if negative experiences actually did work, then there wouldn't be a drug problem today, in my opinion. The problem to me isn't about, it's not entirely about getting the drugs off the street. It's about finding why so many people are turning to drugs to escape their life, regardless of whether it's mental health issues, life issues, or whatnot. That's where I think the conversation really needs to start. And that's all I got. And I look forward to having a great meeting with everybody here. And if you would like to ask a question, please hit the raise hand button on your Zoom, and we will try to get to you as soon as possible. First question, I think we will go to Jay Fincher.
I don't have anything at this time. Go ahead, Jr.
Okay,
I know you had one, but go ahead with it.
Okay, Amanda Bass Darnell, do you have a question for the senator, or?
I'm gonna wait for a couple people to go and see.
Okay, don't be scared now. Senator's here for us.
You know,
He's here
you know I'm not.
to join the conversation.
Okay,
mean,
well, I'll jump in then. So I guess we've asked a couple of different people like what their I guess like views are. Do you I don't want to get too personal and ask if you have like any personal experience with like recovery or addiction. I don't want to put you on the spot, but what are your thoughts, and what would you plan to change coming up that would help us make like a decision on which way we want to vote and like how we want to decide?
Sure, Amanda, that's an excellent question. And to answer your question, I don't have personal experience with addiction or recovery, but I do believe that just like mental health challenges, I think substance abuse recovery should be treated in hospitals and treatment centers, not jail cells. And so I look at substance abuse and recovery from that lens. I do have family members who have struggled and continue to struggle with substance abuse. And in this day and age, we're seeing so much. Everything is about money. Hospitals, treatment, everything is about money and what is deemed, I guess, medically necessary versus what I just believe that we should have wraparound social services basically for substance abuse recovery, because you have to treat the whole person. And so I'm not a licensed clinician or anything, but just from what I've seen and what I've read and heard, I don't know if y'all know this, but just after I graduated law school, I worked for Republican Attorney General Charlie Condon. Before I worked for a Democratic governor, I worked for Charlie Condon at a time when our state was #1 in the nation for women who are murdered by men as a result of domestic violence. And there were a lot of substance abuse issues intertwined in those issues. And so that was kind of my biggest introduction to substance abuse recovery and just substance abuse issues in general. And I know that you can't treat the addiction without treating the whole person. And when I say that, I mean, we were looking at housing and jobs and employment and how to social challenges that people face every day, family issues, family dynamics. So there are a host of issues that have to be treated as the substance abuse issues are being treated. And so, I just believe that we've got to get away from just looking at things from a financial perspective and doing the least in terms when it comes to treatment of addictions in our state, and look at the whole person. I believe in public and private sector partnerships, always have. I think those are a good way to advance and do a more comprehensive view, because we don't just live in the public sector and we don't just live in the private sector. We are facing a myriad of challenges and issues every day in both of those worlds. And so we have to bring those worlds together. We have to bring stakeholders together to come up with comprehensive solutions. So that's kind of the way my perspective has been informed by my lived experiences with family members and my professional and political experiences with organizations and individuals who are trying to address these issues. And now more than ever, especially during the pandemic, we're seeing that resources are less available, even though we have more money in the state. And so we have to have a governor, which is why I'm running, who will prioritize the people of the state and all of their needs. I've heard this governor, our current governor, say, we've got a surplus of money and we've got unprecedented money, and we do have unprecedented money coming into the state. But the question is, how is that money being allocated? And it's I can tell you for sure, it's not going to public education. I think I heard someone mention earlier that, education should begin early, and it should. It's not going to rural communities, underserved communities, where a lot of these issues are more prevalent because of the disparities that exist and the investments that aren't being made in those communities. So, we have to treat all of that. And now that we have unprecedented money, I can't say we have a surplus, because I just believe South Carolina can never have a surplus of money, federal or state, unless and until the basic needs of every South Carolinian have been met. And that is not the case. So as our next governor, because I'm running hard to win, I can tell you that I will prioritize the needs of all South Carolinians, especially those who struggle with with the addiction and recovery.
Aaron's up first.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Aaron?
Senator, thank you for being here. I always think that, having these conversations with the recovery community and candidates running for office makes a ton of sense, because there's a lot of us in recovery out here. And I love having the conversation with candidates of this, this is what it's going to take to get my vote. So
Right.
I'm very blunt. And so this is, so I'm gonna tell you what it's gonna take to get my vote. And so I've been in recovery since September 6th of 2003. And to me, one of the most important aspects in terms, like, we fund, you were talking about dollars and the way that we fund this. I think that a lot of funding goes to prevention and treatment, which is important because it allows people access. But if you look at funding addiction as a health issue, as like a continuum, right? We do not invest in ongoing peer recovery community support in people's communities the way that we do other health conditions. And so my question really is about, there are peer recovery community centers, peer coaching, just the same way that, we've seen success in mental health coaching and one-stop shops where people in recovery can go to allow in their communities to allow recovery to thrive. And we have not made that commitment to fund recovery the way that we fund prevention and treatment. And so what's happening is that we have this revolving door of whether people are coming out of a jail sentence or coming out of a treatment center, or they're trying to get out of their recovery house to start living on their own. People need that support in their community, and we're not funding it. And so there's just this, it just, people are in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. And so it's like stopping drinking and drugging is hard, but staying stopped is where we're getting tripped up with people. And so my question to you, if you were elected as governor, is can you take a look at, A, where the funding's going, and B, work to make a commitment that we're helping people get healthy within their own communities. That's my first question. I do have another one, but there's other people that have questions, so I don't want to take up too much time. But that's my question to you is can we make that a priority?
Absolutely. That is my answer to your question. Absolutely. Since I am not involved anymore in the day-to-day of addiction and recovery challenges that so many South Carolinians face, that is something, another thing that I think is important as governor, and that I will do, is listen to those who are on the front lines of these fights. And I'm seeing more and more that, we as a General Assembly, the House and Senate members, when it comes to issues like public education and teachers, we don't listen to teachers on the front end. We don't listen to school administrators on the front end, and it's costing us. It's costing us teachers, it's costing us students because our best and brightest are leaving here as quickly as they can because of our policies. And the same is true, I would say, the same is comparable and true to those who are dealing with addiction and trying to recover from substance abuse. We have to listen to you guys on the front end. I will pledge to you and commit to you that I will listen to you on the front end. And if you believe that I think you said peer counseling, are those like programs that can be integrated into the community?
Yeah, so
But
yeah, like not like non-clinical peer-to-peer
Right.
coaching.
Right.
Yeah, peer-to-peer.
so I'm thinking about what you're saying, because all of that is coming back to me. It is vaguely familiar. The work that I did that kind of put me more in the realm of dealing with substance abuse and recovery and addiction and recovery issues or challenges were back when I did work in the AG's office and the governor's office. But yes, I can see how that would be helpful. I think anytime you can partner the community with government in particular, where the resources are, it's always a good thing. And to have people who are on the front lines of these fights, who know what they need to recover, is tremendously helpful. We just have government officials, I really can't refer to them as leaders, but we have government officials right now who refuse to listen. And they know that they don't know what the needs are, whether it's in education or with issues like this, but yet they keep mandating certain things that I guess sound good in theory or pander to a certain part of the electorate. And that's just not helpful. It's not helpful to you. And it's not helpful to us as a state in terms of moving forward. I don't want to see anybody in and out of treatment centers or recovery programs. I mean, that's not what it's about. It should be something that is funded, prioritized, and sustainable, and something that is practical. And the peer counseling programs sound like they are absolutely practical and absolutely doable. And we just need somebody in that space who will prioritize that. And I will, as governor. And I thank you for sharing that, because it's not something that was at the top of my mind, not having worked in that environment recently.
Thank you.
Carl, do you have a question?
Hey, Senator, thank you for taking the time today. A couple of things. I was never in a treatment center, so I don't have the experience with the treatment centers. But some of the things that as I go out here and with sponsoring people is sometimes after treatment, when they come out of the treatment centers and they don't have that group support when they're out on their own. And I live out here amongst Corner. And I deal with a couple of people that may live out in St. Stephen's and all that, kind of out in rural areas. And sometimes they have trouble getting transportation to be able to go to like an AA or CA meeting. And to me, that's where they would get their biggest support and start building their networks, as a sponsor, I try to pick up some of these people, but I can't afford, especially with the gas prices today, I can't afford driving all over trying to get these guys to meetings. So one of the areas I see, like I said, I can't speak on the treatment, so I can only speak through my experience. I was able to get into the program of AA and CA to be able to get that support I needed to be clean and free for over a year now. And I deal with these people a lot of times. It's when they're coming out of the treatment centers, it's when they have their biggest struggle, trying to get that support. And now they're on their own, so they don't have that structure like they would have, because not everybody ends up in an Oxford house or something like that. So they might have to go back with family or something. So they don't have that structure that they have to follow that helps them. So now as they're coming out and they're freshly trying to get a start, they don't even know where to begin. And then, as life struggles a little bit and they're trying to put their life back together, that's when they, in my opinion, I see a lot of them stumbling, going back out there, and reuse it until again, they try to come back and they bounce back and forth because they don't have any structure after they come out of the Oxford House.
Right. So Carl, I am well aware of the challenges like that, that people face once they come out. And that's why I mentioned, being in favor of wraparound services. I think that transportation and challenges like that are precisely what I envision when I think about wraparound services for individuals who are not at a treatment center, but trying to familiarize themselves or reintegrate back into society in a meaningful way, and in a way that doesn't send them back into substance abuse. So yeah, housing, employment, transportation, all of those things I think are well within our reach as a state to promote and fund those services so that there is less in and out. That should be the goal. But I know all too well that currently we say we are committed to certain things, and then we do things that are counterproductive to those, to the things that we say. So it's just like when I think about this pandemic and forcing people back to work for slave wages, or without any additional pay or protections during the height of the pandemic. I mean, those things to me are comparable to what you're describing. We're not thinking about the fact that sick people don't work. And so if we're trying to get people back to work, why would we make them sick? Why would we put them in an environment that makes them sick or worse? So the same is true when people are coming out of those challenges with substance abuse and they are attempting to recover but have setbacks because of transportation. Why are we not making transportation available? Why are we not working with them to make sure that they have housing, to make sure that they have gainful employment? Those are the things, those are the basic needs that I was referencing earlier. If we don't do that, I mean, it's a sure thing that people are going to have setbacks, and some of them won't come out of them because of the back and forth, and sometimes it's just it allows people to, or it forces them into a situation that they can never recover from. So I am not I'm not one of those people who is going to look at it purely from a monetary perspective. I think that if we look at it just from what it costs, we're not seeing the whole picture or the whole person. And I'm committed to the whole person when I think about recovery efforts. So as governor, I will continue to see this issue or these challenges through that lens.
You good, Carl?
Because I mean, like I say, when you live out here in the rural area, there's not much public transportation out here in Monk's Corner, St. Stephen's, or anything like that. So that's where it's a real big challenge out here. When you start looking into rural areas of South Carolina, that we don't have the luxury of buses or anything like that, or very little bus service out here. So that's why it's very important out here.
Right, and I mean, I'm from a rural area. And so I was born and raised in Marlborough County. And I understand the challenges that are specific to rural communities like mine. I mean, when I go to my hometown county, there's still many broadband dead zones. But I tell people every day, this is 2022, it's not 1922. And there's so many more services available now that we are in the 21st century, even though sometimes we don't act like it. But we've got to bring our state into the 21st century when it comes to issues and challenges like transportation. I mean, just because we don't have public transportation in those areas, and we don't in my hometown either, doesn't mean we can't. Doesn't mean that we can't find or come together to figure out other resources that might be available. If it's not a bus, it could be, it could be vans, it could be an extension of, we got to learn to think outside the box and think through. I mean, now, when I was growing up in Marlboro County, we didn't have Uber or Lyft either. But now, our state has at least evolved into some of those areas. So that's encouraging, but not fast enough. We have to make sure that people have the tools that they need and the resources that they need, regardless of where they live. I mean, it's sad that we have resources that are available in the more urban parts of the state than we do in the rural still. And we have, folks like my sons were educated in Richland School District 2. And yet when I go to my hometown county, the schools are, there's nothing that compares to the educational resources and opportunities that are available here. In Richland County, we have public transportation. We don't have that in Marlboro County. So we've got to bring our rural areas up so that the playing field is level in all parts of the state. We have 46 counties, and we should focus on making sure that all 46 counties are able to move and navigate this state equally. And I will be committed to that. I mean, that is a big part of my focus, and will be as governor, to make sure that we give our rural communities the same resources and opportunities that are available to our larger communities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Kathy, do you want to ask your question, or would you like me to, since you put it in the chat?
I'll ask it. So do you have a plan to increase access to detox for the uninsured, particularly for the opiate addicts, since that is the majority of the what's presenting today are fentanyl and heroin addicts?
So I have a few plans that I've released, and there are some that we're working on. And one is to expand Medicaid, because as somebody who lives with a chronic health condition, I live with sickle cell anemia. I know that there are so many people who still don't have access to quality health care, over 100,000 in South Carolina, that would be helped by simply having access to quality health care. And certainly those who suffer or who struggle with substance abuse. We are in South Carolina, we have one of the highest rates of opioid addiction and deaths. And I can tell you, as somebody who championed and advocated for and co-sponsored bills to legalize medical marijuana and to decriminalize marijuana, there's no appetite right now in the General Assembly, because it is Republican controlled, to do anything meaningful to help those who suffer with opioid addiction, knowing that marijuana is a safe, less addictive. I've read that it's not addictive, but there are some studies that say otherwise, but it is certainly less, it is certainly more safe, and there's a much less likelihood of death due to marijuana usage, especially now that opioid addiction is so high, and it is a safer and just as effective alternative. But as governor, I will focus on, as I said earlier, listening to those who are on the front lines of this fight. I'm not going to know everything that it might be helpful or might be useful or practical to communities who are on the front lines of addiction and recovery. But for those who are, I am willing to listen and willing to prioritize the issues and the treatments that you believe are most effective. And so, while I may not have a plan that has been formulated specifically to address those issues, I do have plans to make sure that nobody is left behind. Nobody has to face their recovery efforts alone. And I will prioritize those the challenges that you face and try to do everything within my power to make sure that you have the resources that you need to fully recover, so that there's not the back and forth, the in and out, and so that you can, move forward in a meaningful way without having to continuously face the challenges that you're facing now.
I appreciate that. It's interesting because, detox is the first step for many people, especially for physically addictive opioids and opiates. And there's actually a thing going across the entire state. The uninsured people, if they are only on opiates and opioids, are not allowed access unless something else is in their system. I was just on a call last week and 4 different providers were talking about the exact same thing. There's only 3 places that were on the call, and they all require insurance to come in that will take an opioid or an opiate detox.
Wow.
So it's a thing.
Wow.
And your one state, because the JK Foundation, which I represent, functions in several states. We're fully registered in South Carolina, and 69% of the people we're helping today are South Carolina residents, due to the fact of the lack of Medicaid, particularly for men. And so this is a barrier we see all the time. And you have Morris Village, right, which on average has a 6-week bed wait. An opiate addict doesn't have 6 weeks when they finally ask for help. They're hard in at that point. And
Right.
so it's very hard to safeguard people in that case. So that's been our thing lately, has been that they will not help an opiate addict. And, that's where it is. That's honestly where the biggest problem lies right now.
And that is what I meant when I said, serving in the Senate, and I've been in the Senate now for 6 years. And when I was in the House, we are constantly doing things that are counter to what we say we want. And we say we want to see South Carolinians truly recover and truly be able to live, a life free of addiction and substance abuse issues, but yet we pull the rugs out from under them when they are trying to do just that. And as governor, I can tell you, I will not, I will fight, I will continue to fight so that everybody has access to the resources that they need to ban one group from being served in that way, simply because they are addicted to opioids I didn't realize that until today. So thank you for sharing that, because it just speaks to exactly what I've witnessed. Not knowing that, I just assumed that because our opioid addiction and death rates are so high, we were all in for, to make sure that we were adequately addressing those issues when it comes to our recovery efforts. But I have seen and read about, you talked about detoxification being the first tier of that, of those recovery efforts. And I've seen more and more when we have more and more money, even that the state is only concerned about money. And they are willing to pull the rug out from under South Carolinians simply to say that they are treating these addictions, and when they're absolutely not. And if detoxification, and I think there was one other part of the recovery effort that was being that they were doing the same thing too. I can't remember what it was called, but at any rate, it seems that money has become the priority. And so, the folks who are making these decisions are basing it on, what how quickly the state can get in and get out when it comes to paying for these services. And I just think that wraparound services are much more comprehensive and meaningful way to address all of these issues, and certainly not by restricting coverage to only certain people or individuals who are struggling with certain addictions. That is something that we definitely need to change. And I thank you for bringing that up, because I wasn't aware that it was happening. But as governor, I will prioritize all who struggle with addictions and not do these backdoor kinds of bans for people who are struggling with opioid addiction or any other addiction, especially now that we have money to fund those services and to prioritize those services in a comprehensive way.
Are you aware, I don't mean to monopolize it, do you mind, JR? I just want to ask one other question. Are you aware of what states? I'm okay? Okay. Are you aware of South Carolina Alliance for Recovery Residences, the NAR affiliate in South Carolina?
I have, yes, I am aware. As I said earlier, I'm not, I don't deal with the same organizations because I'm in a different part of government now, but yes, I am aware of the Alliance and the services that they provide. I just am not, I'm probably not up to speed on what they are now, because, I dealt with those issues more when I was working with the AG's office and the governor's office. But if you have additional information to share, please.
I will. Actually, I'm on the board with them, and I have been since prior to getting the NAR affiliation. And we also, the JK Foundation also runs a recovery house in Sumter, South Carolina. And we were the sixth one to get certified in the state for meeting a minimum set of standards, which are actually kind of comprehensive, because there's a lot, I want to call it the Wild West. There's a lot of people running recovery housing that is not safe or accountable. And so the idea is to bring a minimum set of standards into the state where people can recognize who's willing to be accountable for what they're doing and who is not. And and I agreed with you when you said it was a continuum of care and it needs to be person-centered, right? Because right now we have a healthcare system that is not person-centered, it's insurance-centered. Bottom line, if your insurance will pay, you can have help. And if you don't have insurance and you don't have Medicaid, good luck, right? So, yeah, I appreciate that your stance is person-centered. And who was it? Clark said something about transportation. Two things. I know JR knows about it, and I know Jay knows about it. We had to, because we move people across the state all the time, which is very difficult in that state. We move them into detoxes or treatment centers or long-term recovery communities, which is our real focus. Because long-term recovery communities stabilize people for 6 months or more, which is phenomenal because it takes a while to get your feet back under you. And we actually created like a private little group on Facebook that is actually recovery rides, moving people around the state. We tag people in long-term recovery from different areas to see if they can help us. And sometimes it's 3 people that link up to get somebody 4 hours away. But to what Clark said about rural transportation, that would be an awesome thing to be funded into the recovery community organizations, the RCOs, to have funding to be able to create a van to pick up on the way to a specific meeting once a week. I mean, they're set up to provide a multitude of services to the community, but I don't believe any of them gets money to be able to transport people to meetings. I mean, the structure's there, just utilize it. Yeah.
Right. I agree wholeheartedly. And, when I talked about public and private sector partnerships, that is what I envision, kind of coming from those partnerships, but also state government has to partner with local government, and all of those things are possible. I've been part of, those partnerships for the entire time I've been working in and around state government. And so I know that we don't have to leave our rural communities and those who are already at a disadvantage because of the disparate treatment and the investments that have not been made in those communities, we don't have to leave them behind. We just have government officials who have chosen to leave them behind. And that's why I'm running. I want us to create a South Carolina where all of us have equal opportunity and where all of us are included on the front end, not on the back end when they're saying this is what the state is willing to do for you. But this is, I want it to be an exchange of ideas, because clearly the ones who have controlled this state in terms of the politics of the state for 2 decades now have not figured it out. And I'm not just people-centered when it comes to addiction and recovery. I'm people-centered when it comes to my politics. And so that is the difference. And that will be the reason that I will prioritize the issues of the people of our state. And that especially includes those who struggle with substance abuse.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have one more time for a question? One more? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I
Okay.
need to probably cut it by 10:45, but yes, one more question is great.
Nancy, you want to do yours?
Thank you, Senator McLeod, for your time. And
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you acknowledging where you know and where you would like to be caught up on, how things look in our recovery community. But something I think that's important that I've learned in my 5 years, 6 years of this walk is that this is a community disease, and it's a community recovery that's necessary, that starts with a treatment, that starts with detox, that starts with recovery community organizations led through peer support. And it is difficult from my experience to find adequate funding for things other than prevention and education, because those areas are easy to quantify, qualify, and measure. When we talk about recovery capital, and how we measure recovery, that's kind of a whole new gamut, not only for our state, but the country. And there's some areas of the country that are doing really well. But again, from my experience is that when recovery capital increases, whether that's through family members working their own recovery, because not only when our loved one goes to treatment or start working their recovery, we don't realize how sick we are as family members. And there is minimal funding for that family aspect, as well as the community aspect of that knowledge. And we have problems with, scholarships for treatment. So we had to start that program. We really had to be innovative through community partners to be sustainable. And that's difficult. And I think all of us acknowledging that we need these recovery community organizations, there's not a lot of funding for that. And it's hard to get community buy-in, because how does that measure? How can we show them how it's doing better? And that's been a big challenge for us. I mean, we have 3 years under our belt in our recovery community organization, and we serve Charleston, Berkeley, and Dorchester counties, but it's difficult to be able to have, whether it's county buy-in, state buy-in, or town buy-in, because the way they measure, or way it's always been measured for recovery, isn't the same as prevention or treatment. And that's something that I think is a huge challenge that has to be acknowledged, because not only are individuals in recovery, but you need the recovery allies in order to be sustainable, and recovery for family members. And because from my experience, my substance was my loved one. If they were going to treatment, if they were doing okay, but then when it was turned on me to do better, get better through family recovery coaches, through therapists, that was difficult to find. And it's a necessary thing if we want an overall healthy family and a healthy community that's recovery centered. And I love that you talked about wraparound care, because it needs to be wraparound care for the whole community, the family, as well as the individual. And so that's something that I think that not a lot of people acknowledge, is the family is just as sick as the individual, and the family needs just as much work and support as the individual.
Right. Yeah, that is so true. And that's something that, our family has dealt with. As I said, I haven't personally dealt with addiction and recovery, but I know the havoc that it wreaks on a family who deals with that, trying to save their loved one. And it's a roller coaster, and it's not something that our family knew a whole lot about in terms of the resources that were available to us as a family. And so I get I think what you're saying is that those wraparound services that I referenced really need to address not just the individual who is struggling personally, but the family, the entire family. And that's something that, you know, I definitely agree that we need to do that. And I'd love to see South Carolina. One of the things that I'm hopeful for as I run for governor and travel the state is that we can one day be a state where we're at the top of every good list and doing innovative things and things that are outside of the norm, because we have been, always been, in my opinion, a very reactive state, and not even reactive to the extent that we are good at it. We don't even react in a good way or an adequate way when challenges are presented to us as a state. But when it comes to addiction and recovery, what you just described is one way that we can be on the front end, especially if other states have not figured that out yet and have not addressed it as a state. That's something that ideally I would love to champion as governor, so that people who truly have struggled and the families that have truly been through it with them, struggling as a result, are all able to move forward in a positive and better direction. So yeah, thank you for that reminder, because you described my family when you described that scenario just now. And as governor, I would get to prioritize that and lead from the front instead of being at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to issues like this. These are, and I say personal when it comes to addiction and recovery, and now, you know, acknowledging and addressing the family unit as a whole, because that is the support system for those who struggle. But it's really a social issue. It's a societal issue, because if one of us is sick, if one of us is struggling, then, you know, we are part of the whole. And that's something that concept, that perspective is what I believe is sorely missing in government. I mean, we are meant to be a resource to the people of South Carolina, and we have just not done that. And to a large extent, I have to be honest and say that where I sit in the Senate, it's intentional. It's intentional by the Republican majority to not deal with any of these issues, because it's not red meat for their base. And we've got to get away from that and focus on the people of South Carolina and all of the people and all of our challenges, because we are stronger together. And that's a fact. And until we get that, we're going to continue to struggle individually and collectively. And there, I've talked longer than I said I would, but it is 10:49. I do have an 11 o'clock meeting that I have to kind of get ready for. So I just want to thank all of you, though, again, for having me today. It's been enlightening for me, and I hope that I was able to at least address and answer your questions adequately, because that's important. I don't want anybody to leave this call and say, well, you know, she didn't answer my question, or I had another issue or question that I wanted to ask. If you do, and I didn't get to answer it, please reach out to my team. You guys have our information, and let me know, and we'll try to answer those questions that I may not have gotten to as best we can. We're in the heat of the the primary because we're in the final stretch, only a few more days before our June 14th primary, but we will try to get back to you as quickly as we can with answers if you do have additional questions.
Thank you for joining us today, Senator. I mean, it was very enlightening on so many levels. It's so nice to talk with someone in that leadership position to just to get on the same page with you on what we deal with as a recovery community. And thank all of you for jumping on today with us. I mean, I love seeing everybody come together for a common good.
Absolutely. I do too.
Good luck. And
thank you.
We hope to have you back on here very soon.
I hope to come back on as the Democratic nominee and later as governor of South Carolina. So thank you again for having me. Enjoyed being with you.
Okay, you want to leave it open to a community talk discussion?
Sure. Let's go. I mean, I'm off till 12. I'm not sure if someone from her staff is still here. But I really like some of the answers I heard. I mean, I don't know about you guys.
Eric, did you have a question or comment?
I do, but I don't want to disrupt you all doing just a quick debrief on what she had to say, because I actually live in Alabama, so I don't get a vote in this matter. But in my role as Vice President of Clinical Affairs for Millennium Health, I do find myself in a lot of discussions. We do a lot of work with HHS, with NIDA, with a number of states, bunch of different things. And I've heard several of the points that I find myself discussing a lot related to opioid use disorder, et cetera. But the question that I really wanted to ask you all, guessing you'd have more insight than probably even the senator, is related to stimulant use disorder. We're watching methamphetamine trends very closely. We're watching movement of meth really throughout the nation, but especially in the eastern half of the country, where we're seeing significant gains in methamphetamine positivity. And the treatment of stimulant use disorder, as you all know better than I, is extremely difficult. So I'm finding myself more and more frequently in discussions related to contingency management ideas. And I actually put my hand up to ask the senator that question, but I thought, I don't know how really aware she would be of that level of specificity related to contingency management programs or ideas for those with stimulant use disorder. But I thought for you, I would love if you have any insight, any thoughts on this type of approach for those with stimulant use disorder. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Anybody?
What kind of programs are you guys doing now?
Well, we're not doing them specifically. What we provide is the urine drug testing that for so many of those programs serves as one of the core tenets of success, right? And so where we find ourselves in discussions is, what mechanisms could we possibly put in place to tie our urine drug test results in any number of ways, whether it's the finding of something that shouldn't be there, or let's say they're prescribed something for opioid use disorder like a Suboxone, and we do find that they are taking it. I mean, you can run it any number of ways, right? And tying that to some reward for the individual with stimulant use disorder. So right now it's just more discussions. And what I continue to hear is that these programs seem promising, but they're still not reimbursed. I just wanted to get a sense of what you guys thought about it. Have you seen it? Are any of you doing this in any way currently with those with stimulant use disorder, or with opiate use disorder for that matter? I just want to gain any insight I could on it as we just continue to think about how we may be able to partner with clinicians to help them out in that regard.
I created the Recovery Revolution Live Facebook streaming platform, and it's recently we just had the release announcement of something called Sober Coin, which is a sober crypto coin that's going to be used to reward
Yeah.
people for staying sober. If that is that what
Exactly,
you're talking about?
right.
Something
That's
like
a
that?
perfect example. Exactly
Okay.
right.
I mean, I could hook you up with their director if you would like. I mean,
Yeah, or if you have, or maybe it sounds like it just started. If you had any, any results yet, anything even anecdotal to suggest, is it successful, or, what is, I just know it's a pretty hot topic, right? The idea of paying somebody to stay abstinent, I've heard a number of different opinions for that. But, I just continue to come back, and I heard so much of it in your voices. I mean, we're just in a terribly desperate time out there right now as it relates to substance use disorder. And whether it's fentanyl test strips, whether it's putting Narcan in every hand in every community out there, whatever you can do, all these things I think should be considered and considered seriously. And this contingency management idea, especially relates to stimulant use disorder, because you have so little to help them, and relapse rates are astronomical for those folks. That's why I was especially interested in it. But that sounds like exactly the kind of thing I'm getting at. Yeah, if you'll connect me to her, or anything you have, you could send me. I put my email in the chat. I would love to see it.
okay. Actually, we have Chrissy on, and she actually works for sober.com, or so. Actually, they're the creators of Soberverse. I don't know if you've heard of that platform that just came out. It's like a social media for sober people. But they're the ones that launched SoberCoin, and Dr. Jonas was the creator. It's something that he's been working on for the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I see it here now in the chat. Yeah, I'll check all that out. This is great. Anything that you can report, or is it too soon? Anything related to any successes, the uptake, or anything of that nature yet?
Yeah, I believe it just launched maybe a week ago,
okay.
2 weeks ago. This was off a recent episode.
Oh, well, I'll follow it closely then. Yeah, I may reach back out to you guys at some point and give it a few months and see where you are with that. I'm just very interested in that.
I know by staying sober, you can earn the sober coin to pay for your rent, pay for your recovery coaching. There's a lot of good things coming in. And all you have to do is just check in every day and post in the community, and you earn your rewards for staying sober. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about it when you were having the discussion about transportation, well, somebody, unless you can get true public transportation, you mentioned Uber, Lyft, all these things. Well, somebody's paying for that. Yeah. So, could you use this to help with that? I mean, there's a number I've heard of, buying, it's almost like a Walmart gift card where you go and just get necessary supply, whatever. I think all that's great. So I'm just really interested in it as a potential avenue, because I can see where we would be able to partner with clinicians on it as well, because there's so many things, access to that patient information that we could use to come up with reward ideas.
And more. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe
well, thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
But
welcome.
it's yet something, somebody has to pay for it, right? As the senator was speaking to. It's
yeah, I wanted to ask her about well, on her platform, she's for legalizing marijuana and decriminalizing it. And I was going to ask her, like I asked Joe Cunningham the 2 weeks prior, what are they planning to do with all the marijuana tax revenue? What programs are they earmarking it for? I mean, to me, investing in your state should be top priority. And one of the biggest issues nationwide is the epidemic that we're currently going through. So I mean, we have room. There's so many great things that we can do as a nation to combat this thing and turn it back around, because in my opinion, I do believe that we are currently losing this war, and we've got to start trying different ideals.
Well, hopefully she'll be successful in making Medicaid more accessible to people that need it. Like, I plan on moving back to South Carolina, but as you know, I have a lot of heart problems and health struggles. And if I was living in South Carolina right now, I wouldn't be able to get the treatment that I need, you know,
Amanda, did you have a
even for
question?
therapy and stuff like that. It goes along with recovery. You know, I'm really blessed to have 10 care right now. But when I move back, I'm definitely going to need those services. So hopefully, you know, she'll follow through on maybe trying to help Medicaid be accessible for everyone that needs it. Because I think when I lived in South Carolina, it was you had to make $300 or less a month to qualify if you had a job. And that's just hard, you know? I'm nervous. I don't like being on camera. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to participate.
Well, you're doing great. I think those are all great points. For sure.
I'm trying so hard to participate.
And my question also for you all, which this is obviously very urine drug testing kind of centered. And a lot of the places that I've been into, I know that point of care testing is typically covered very well by Medicaid, Medicare, and obviously direct bill type practices. But I don't know if you all are aware of any cases where definitive testing is typically not covered by the South Carolina grants. So for definitive testing, that's something I want to start looking into to definitely help you all out. LARDAC, you know, I've started looking into it for them so that we can actually get, you know, better data and results for you all to help people in treatment and to go through treatment for and recovery and everything like that.
Well, I'm a graduate of Charleston Drug Court, and I know our drug testing, I believe, came out of our weekly fees. So that was another thing I wanted to talk to her about, was the implementation of more treatment courts across the state.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I know, JR, you mentioned the decriminalization of marijuana, and with Joe Cunningham, you know, we spoke to him about taking like the criminal side, the charges, and how it affects like your future when you have a charge like that, and like kind of where he was with making it so like if you have an opiate or a methamphetamine charge and it's 10 years ago and you've been sober and it's ruining your life, what options other than just, you know, marijuana, or, you know, would she be willing to extend it, you know, further than past marijuana? And I also wanted to, you know, the funding that everyone was talking about, I feel like is so crucial to like every single aspect that was discussed this whole like hour. Funding and grants are just like what gets us to all those things. So I'm really hoping that she also like kind of follows through, like Heather said, with, you know, following through with the funding so that we can reach more people between the transportation, the Medicaid, and with Eric, speaking of like incentives, so the RCO that I work for, Wake Up Carolina, we do HIV testing. And one thing that I thought was so neat when I started working for Wake Up Carolina was that they have incentives so that if you get the free HIV testing, it's free, you know, it's a rapid finger stick, you know, very, very simple, very quick, pretty painless. You, they've like partnered, I guess, with CVS, where they've got $10 gift cards for CVS specifically, and you get the $10 gift card if you do the free HIV testing. And that incentive has, just in my experience, you know, I'm just speaking from my personal experience, has really brought more interest in than just speaking of a basic free HIV test. Hearing the $10 incentive, you know, gift card. And what's so beautiful about the whole gift card situation is that CVS and places like that, you know, they can be very specific about what you can use it on. For instance, what we